السلام عليكم يا شباب. اللي بده يطلع هسه يطلع إن كانت له الشجاعة أن يطلع هسه. أما تسجل حضور غياب الفيلم روح احكي لأبوك أو لأبوك وقل له أنا بس ياخذوا حضور غياب بفيلم. روح احكي جرب. Anyway, we all wish you success. Everybody, me, the university, your parents, everybody wishes you success. But the key to success is in your hand. It's not in anybody's hand. It's in your hand. If you want to succeed, give it what it takes. Whose hand do you think this is? It's your hand. It's your hand. Success is something you have to climb for. وانت على الأرض success ينزلك. Success you have to climb for. Anyway, let's talk about development of the gastrointestinal tract. What is this? This is the trilaminar embryonic disc. وين هذا؟ This is the trilaminar disc. This is the amniotic cavity, and this is the yolk sac. When we say trilaminar, we say there is an ectoderm, endoderm, and mesoderm. Now there is the process of folding. There is part of the yolk sac is getting involved in the trilaminar disc, lined with this yellow tissue, which is the endoderm. The beginning of this structure is called the foregut, and here is the mouth, and here is the heart, and this is going to be the gastrointestinal tract, and this is the hindgut, the last part of the GIT at this end. Gets more developed, and the lumen of the gastrointestinal tract is part of the yolk sac. Okay, and it's surrounded by the endoderm. Now, we are looking at this area here. Because of the folding, this area is going to be constricted. See? This area is going to be constricted, and this is going to be the future gastrointestinal tract. The connection between the gastrointestinal tract and the yolk sac is not going to be lost because we need it. When organs develop in this cavity, especially the liver is getting larger and larger very quickly, other organs need to come into this place. And then when the abdominal cavity is larger, these organs come back. So we need this connection. Okay, this is called umbilical vesicle. This is what remains of the yolk sac outside the embryo. This is the foregut. Here is the heart. And here is a very important structure made of this red tissue, which is a mesoderm. This is called septum transversal. Let's see cross-section. Now we know this is amniotic cavity and this is the yolk sac. The amniotic cavity is getting larger, the yolk sac is getting smaller. This is development of the neural tube. Okay. This is what is going to be the future tube of the gastrointestinal tract. You can see there is a constriction because of folding of the embryo. Right? We're going to have, this is the lumen of the gastrointestinal tract lined with endothelium. This is going to be the vitelline duct. The umbilicus will be here. And this is the yolk sac. لو سمحت اللي بده يطلع من هسه دفعة واحدة. اوكي؟ بس راح يفوتك الفيلم وعمرك ما راح تشوف. ما شاء الله والله. كلهم شايلين مفتاح السكسس بجيبهم. اوكي. Now this is the vitelline duct, lumen of gastrointestinal tract, and this is the yolk sac. Then more folding till connection is lost. What remains is the tube. Inside is the endoderm and outside is red mesoderm with a dorsal mesentery. And you know what is a mesentery? A double fold of peritoneum. Now in the foregut is divided into two parts. The pharyngeal part, the part in the head and neck, will be discussed later in the development of the head and neck. And the foregut starts at the esophagus. Okay? Here is the head, and here is the pericardium, and this is the septum transversal. And you can see there are different structures developing from the tube. The respiratory system is going to be developed from the upper part of the esophagus as a bud that comes out, and then a septum is created so that the trachea is now separate from the esophagus. The stomach is going to, the tube in the area of the stomach is going to dilate. Then this is the vitelline duct, and the yolk sac is going to be here. Let's look at the area of the stomach. This is the tube. Okay, this is posterior and this is anterior. This is the septum transversal. Stomach is going to dilate as a tube. The dilatation happens posteriorly, and it is going to rotate clockwise. The spleen is going to develop in the dorsal mesentery, and the liver is going to develop in the ventral mesentery. The ventral mesentery is part of the septum transversal. We'll show you that sometime later on. See? That's the dorsal part of the pancreas. This is the spleen. And what was posterior in the stomach now is to the left. What was anterior, now it is to the right. And therefore the lesser sac has developed because of the rotation of the stomach. This is the lesser omentum, and this is the stomach. The spleen developed in the dorsal mesentery, and the pancreas is being stuck to the posterior abdominal wall. Let's look at the stomach from right side. This is the tube. The stomach is going to dilate. This is posterior, this is anterior. The dilatation is going to be on the posterior side, which is becoming the greater curvature. Okay. Now this is the lesser curvature and this is the greater curvature. Now we have seen the development of the stomach. There is this red structure here which is called septum transversal. It is a very thick mass of mesoderm. Okay? And this very thick mesoderm extends from the posterior abdominal wall to the anterior abdominal wall, but not all the way. Only to the point of end of foregut, which is the entry of duodenal papillae. So the liver is going to bud from the tube into the septum transversal. Now, the middle gut, which is just beyond the duodenal papilla, is going to develop the middle gut, and it is going to be elongated. Okay, if we go back a little, this is called the liver bud. It comes from the tube, enters the septum transversum, and it is going to form common bile duct, then goes into the septum transversum to form the parenchyma of the liver and endothelial cells of the liver, and a little branch comes out of it, which is going to form the cystic duct and the gallbladder. If you look here, what is going to happen? That's the liver bud growing into the septum transversum, and there's little bud here which is going to form the biliary system, and there's this bud on the dorsal side is going to form part of the pancreas. Okay? The liver is going to get larger and larger inside the septum transversum. The dorsal pancreatic bud is going to get larger, and the gallbladder is, with the cystic duct, is going to develop. That's the tube dilated to form the stomach, and from the endothelium of the tube, a bud comes this way. Ventrally, it is called the liver bud. The liver bud is going to grow into the septum transversum to give us liver cells, and it is going to give us a branch that will form the cystic duct and the gallbladder, and this is the other part of the pancreas. The pancreas is made of two parts, the dorsal part and the ventral part. Now, with the rotation of the stomach, this part is going posteriorly to join the dorsal part. This rotation is clockwise or anti-clockwise. It's going this way. Okay? So it is anti-clockwise. Okay, you see this part, the ventral part of the pancreas, is going to reach the dorsal part. And the duodenum was in the middle, now it is on the right. The bile duct was lateral, now it is posterior. And the ventral bud of the pancreas went this way, clockwise, to join the dorsal part of the pancreas. Let's look at the pancreas. That's the hepatic bud, ventral pancreatic bud, dorsal pancreatic bud. That's the liver and the gallbladder. If you look also here, this bud is going to rotate clockwise. As it rotates clockwise, the gallbladder, the common bile duct is going to be posterior to the duodenum, and the ventral part of the pancreas is going to join the dorsal part. That's cross section. That's the gastrointestinal tube. This is the dorsal bud of the pancreas. That is clockwise rotation. That's how the duodenum and the pancreas, they become retroperitoneal. Now when we come to the middle gut, now it is beyond the point of entry of the common bile duct, and it is a loop and ends at joint of lateral of the right 2/3 of the colon with the left 1/3 of the colon. There is this connection with what remains of the yolk sac, because it is needed so that organs will herniate into the yolk sac and then they come back. And the axis of rotation is the superior mesenteric artery. This is what is going to be, this is called the proximal loop. And this is the distal loop. This is going to be the small intestine, and this is going to be the large intestine. This rotation, you are looking at it from the lateral view, but if you are looking at it from anterior, it is going to be anti-clockwise. The proximal loop, which is going to form the small intestine, is going to elongate a lot. Then there is this rotation. This is anti-clockwise. We need the large intestine to be in front of the small intestine. There is this dilatation here, which is going to be the cecum. Now, the large intestine, as it rotates, it becomes this way. The cecum is going to be under the liver. And then it is going to come down. Now, we have the duodenum in position, we have the large intestine elongated, and we have, because of the rotation, we have the large intestine in front of the duodenum and other parts of the small intestine. We have two rotations. The first one is 180 degrees, and later on we have another rotation, 90 degrees. Now, we know that the ascending colon and the descending colon now are retroperitoneal, but to start with, they have mesentery, and this is going to disappear. Now, in a longitudinal section, in a sagittal section, here is the stomach, that's the two folds, then becoming four folds of the greater omentum. This is the transverse colon, the duodenum and the pancreas. We have just seen how they are positioned retroperitoneal. Now, the hindgut is sharing the last part of it and it is called the cloaca, between the renal system and the gastrointestinal system. And this cloaca is going to be divided into two parts by a septum. Look here what happens. This septum is going this way to stop for the formation of anal canal. Right. Let's revise what we have seen. Now, this is a trilaminar disc made of ectoderm, mesoderm, and endoderm. Above it is amniotic cavity, below it is the yolk sac, and ectoderm is not involved in the development of gastrointestinal tract. يا باشا اترك التليفون. And the mesoderm, the red area, is going to form the wall of the GIT, the muscles. And we are concentrating on this area, the middle of the yolk sac, middle superior part. There will be development of the neural tube, day 20. The amniotic sac is getting larger. The yolk sac is getting constricted, made of mesoderm and endoderm. And in day 21, there is a folding of the embryo to pinch part of the yolk sac into the embryo, and the rest is outside the embryo. So this is what is going to be the future gastrointestinal tube. This pinching is due to the folding of the embryo. We have two foldings, a longitudinal fold and a transverse fold. Now in day 23 we have the tube of the gastrointestinal tract is formed with a dorsal mesentery. So the starting point is at week 4. We have two foldings of the embryo. The result is pinching off part of the yolk sac to form the tube. So the tube wall is made of endoderm and mesoderm. This tube is going to be blocked all the way. It starts as having a lumen, but then cells will grow and they block the lumen. Becomes a core. And then vacuoles appear and the lumen gets canalized again. Sometimes this recanalization fails at different stages. If it fails half the way, then we have stenosis. If it fails in the center, so we have double lumen. And sometimes it leaves a septum, so we have an atresia or an obstruction. Here is a case where the barium went through the esophagus, and this esophagus is dilated, the stomach is dilated, the first part of the duodenum is containing the barium, but it has stopped there because the recanalization did not happen. So in week 6, the tube is completely occluded then vacuoles appear, and there is recanalization. If you look at this drawing of an embryo, this part is the pharyngeal part of the foregut. This is the foregut, and this is the middle gut, and this is the hindgut. This is a scanning electron microscope, and this is the head. This is the mouth opening is going to develop here. Now the pharyngeal part is going to develop by arches, and here is the heart. This is the upper limb. This is the lower limb. This is a scanning electron microscope of the head part of the embryo, where you can see the opening of the mouth. It is here, just above the heart. Pharyngeal part of the foregut will be discussed with the development of head and neck. And here is the cloacal membrane, the last part of the gastrointestinal tube, which is going to be blocked by a membrane. If you look at this drawing, this is the brain, this is the mouth, this is the heart. This is septum transversal. Septum transversal is a very important structure. The liver is going to develop here, the biliary system, the ventral part of the pancreas, okay, and the stomach. And this is the foregut, middle gut, and hindgut. In a cross section, this is in the thorax. The gastrointestinal part in the thorax is the esophagus. This is a pleural cavity, and this is a pleural cavity. This is the septum transversal, making the anterior part of the separation between the two cavities, and this is called peritoneopleural membrane. This is the septum transversal, and this is the esophagus. Now here is the separation of the beginning of the respiratory system. The esophagus, the yellow structure, is going to give a bud, which is going to form the trachea, and then this bud is canalized, and then the connection should disappear, and they become two separate systems. The trachea and the esophagus are partitioned by tracheo-esophageal septum. These are the varieties of things going wrong. In this case, the esophagus ends blindly. So the baby is born, and whatever he takes or she takes will be vomited, because it's not connected to the stomach. And the air goes into the trachea. At the same time, it goes to the stomach. So the stomach will be filled with air. No food is getting to the stomach. In this case, it's also blind-ended. The esophagus ends here, so the baby is going to vomit, and the air is going into the lung all right. In this case, food is getting through the esophagus to the trachea. So the result is very bad chest infection, and at the same time it is getting to the stomach. So the baby comes with severe chest infection. In this case, the food gets into the respiratory system. Very bad chest infection. Nothing is getting into the abdomen. In this case, food is getting into the trachea and gets into respiratory system, and food is not going to the stomach, but air is going to the stomach, so the stomach will be inflated with air. Now, we have looked into this section, septum transversum. That's the tube. This is septum transversum. It's a very thick mass of mesoderm. Above it is the heart, and the lower margin is the point of entry of bile duct into the duodenum. The stomach is going to have a ventral mesentery because of the septum transversum. The falciform ligament, which is a ventral part of the peritoneum, is going to be here. Again, in this image, this is septum transversum, a very thick mass of mesoderm. The stomach is going to dilate, and it has a dorsal mesentery, and the liver bud is going into septum transversum to develop the liver and the biliary system. Again, this is the septum transversum. When it gets developed, the top part is the diaphragm, and here's the celiac artery, and this is the stomach, this is the biliary system. This is the liver developing in the septum transversum. That's the dorsal mesentery. That's the ventral mesentery. There is no ventral mesentery below the entry of common bile duct. Okay, so small intestine does not have a ventral mesentery. Only things develop in septum transversum, because septum transversum extends from the posterior abdominal wall to the anterior abdominal wall. So this is the end of foregut, beginning of middle gut. This is the end of middle gut and beginning of hindgut. Again, this is septum transversum. This is going to be the falciform ligament. This is the liver developing into the septum transversum. This is the lesser omentum. And the greater omentum was posterior. When the stomach rotates, it becomes inferior. That's the development of the diaphragm. The diaphragm develops from three structures. The anterior part from septum transversum, the posterior part from the pleuroperitoneal membranes, and the crura they develop from dorsal mesentery of the esophagus, because the esophagus is going to be stuck to the posterior abdominal wall, and its mesentery comes and forms the crura. So that's septum transversum. This is the pleuroperitoneal membrane. And this is the diaphragm. The anterior part is developing from septum transversum. This part is from the pleuroperitoneal membrane, and the crura they develop from dorsal part of the mesentery. If we look at this area also of septum transversum, that's the end of the foregut, because this is where the common bile duct enters the duodenum. So the duodenum, part of it is in the foregut and part of it is in the hindgut, or middle gut. Now, the stomach is going to dilate, and the dilatation is happening posterior. Okay? So here is the axis first, and the greater curvature was posterior. When it rotates clockwise, the greater curvature is coming to the left. Right? So this is the first rotation. Now, as the greater curvature is to the left and the lesser is to the right, there is another rotation which is along this axis, anteroposterior axis, and this rotation is also clockwise. So all the rotations of the stomach are clockwise. Same idea. Now, when the dorsal mesentery of the stomach was posterior and the stomach rotates, so what was posterior became to the left, this is going to give us the greater omentum. And the part of the septum transversal connected to the liver is going to give us the lesser omentum. This is why it rotates. هاي موجودة في كتابكم. Septum transversum is a very important structure. If you look at the middle gut, let's see again, this is the dorsal mesentery, this is the ventral mesentery, this is the foregut, middle gut, septum transversum. The dorsal part is dorsal pancreatic bud, and this is the liver bud growing into septum transversum. Then this liver bud is going to give us the liver and then the cystic duct and the gallbladder. And then we have this coming from the common bile duct. We have this process here, which is the ventral part of the pancreas. That's the dorsal part of the pancreas. This is the liver bud. It's going to form the liver biliary system. This is this common bile duct. This is the ventral part of the pancreas. Here. Again, it was my own muhadara. Okay. This is the cystic duct. This is the gallbladder. The liver bud is going to give us hepatocytes and endothelial cells of sinusoids. Well, septum transversum is going to give us connective tissue of the liver. So that's the tube, dorsal mesentery, ventral mesentery of septum transversum. The liver is going to develop here. That's the dorsal pancreas, stomach. That's the liver. Liver gets larger. That's falciform ligament. The liver is, that's the dorsal pancreas, liver bud, ventral pancreas, cystic duct, and the liver is going to get larger. You know what the structure here is? Lesser omentum. The liver, that's the falciform ligament. The liver gets much larger. That's the stomach. That's the dorsal mesentery of the stomach. The spleen in it. This is the lesser sac, lesser omentum, liver, falciform ligament. The liver gets larger very quickly. The intestine is going to go out into the yolk sac, out of the abdomen. That's the duodenum, ventral pancreas, dorsal pancreas. Rotation is going to happen like this. That's rotation of the liver. The small intestine, before we leave, there's something very important happens. This is the proximal loop, this is the vitelline duct, and this is the distal. Proximal loop is getting much longer, and the distal loop is not. There's a little dilatation here, it's the cecum, and there is rotation. The rotation is anti-clockwise. We need the large intestine to be in front of the small intestine. If rotation doesn't happen, we have non-rotation. All the small intestine is proximal and all large intestine is distal. This is reversed rotation. Instead of the large intestine being in front of small intestine, here it is posterior. The large intestine must come anterior. The connection with the yolk sac is either kept all the way, it should disappear. Sometimes it gives an extension of the small intestine called mucodiverticulum. Sometimes it develops a cyst. So the cecum is under the liver. These are the rotation. First of all, 90% anti-clockwise, then 180 degrees anti-clockwise, and the cecum is coming down, and there's rearrangement of the small intestine. This is something we have seen just in the film. The hindgut is cloaca, which is common between developing a bladder and the last part of the gastrointestinal tract. A septum goes in and divides it into urinary passages and the rectum. يعطيكم العافية.